Hi, everyone. I'm Shaheen from The Content Mix, and I'm excited to be here with Milo Van Boeijen, who heads marketing across Europe, the Middle East, and Asia Pacific at Marklogic, which is a global B2B software platform that curates enterprise data. Thanks so much for joining us, Milo.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Nice to be here.
Yeah, so could you tell us a bit more about your background, just where you're from and what you do?
Sure. So I'm Milo Van Boeijen, Dutch native, living in France, working for Marklogic, as you said, a data management platform. I guess we called it the Data Hub that runs on our Marklogic server that helps companies, as you said, with their data integration challenges. So I've been working for Marklogic for the past 6 years, and I'm currently the marketing director for, as you said, for the EMEA and the APAC region.
Okay, so what's a typical day at work like for you?
So I run an international team. So there's a few people, as someone in APAC, in Japan, and people in Germany, the UK, the Netherlands, and in France. So it's quite an international bunch. I see myself as an enabler for the team. So if let's say if we split out the tasks if we are in, let's say, preparation mode and execution mode. In preparation mode, it's working with the team on getting the plans together and making sure that they have the tools and all the things that they need in order to do their jobs, from, let's say, from a team or from an organizational perspective, anywhere from getting the budget or the stakeholder alignment, all that stuff too. And then in the execution mode, being, I guess, an enabler for them as well, or being a sounding board, and making sure that again they have everything they need in order to do their jobs as best as they can, and help them remove roadblocks and make sure that we have smooth processes and smooth execution all around.
So Marklogic has like regional teams all over the world, and you're kind of coordinating with all of them.
Yes, so it's an American company, so headquarters in San Carlos in California, so with offices throughout the US, Chicago, Washington, New York, EMEA headquarters over in London in the UK, and with offices in the Netherlands, in France, and in Germany, and in the APAC region as well, so Japan, Singapore, and Australia.
So how did you end up in the France office if the European headquarters are in the UK?
Well, I'm Dutch, and I've been living in France for almost 15 years now, I guess. So maybe we'll talk a little bit about that later on. But so when in my previous adventure, when that ended, and I was sort of looking to go back into the IT industry, I ran into Marklogic, and they were actually opening the office in France at that time, so 6 years ago. So I was actually one of three. We jokingly call ourselves the Three Musketeers that opened the French office, so to speak, with the two sales guys. So yeah, it's sort of a coincidence actually, but on LinkedIn, and I found Marklogic, and they were looking for a marketing manager for the French and the Northern Europe, so Benelux and the Scandinavian region, the Nordic region. Well, having experience in that region and being a Dutch guy,
who speaks French, I presume, as well.
Yes, he speaks French, and it's sort of a best of both worlds in a way. So it was a really good mix, a really good fit. So I joined 6 years ago and sort of moved up, but as I said, started the French region also from a marketing perspective as well, and build out the Northern Europe region up to a point where sort of we grew and we onboarded people locally in regions, and eventually got moved into this EMEA leadership role, so to speak, EMEA, and then APAC as well. So we got the additional responsibility for the APAC region end of last year. So that's how it all developed.
Okay, so let's go back further in time to your career story. I mean, how did you get into marketing in the first place, and get your first role at your career was mainly at Sun Microsystems, right? Like you were there for 10 years before.
Yes.
So, well, tell us the story.
So when I finished studies, my business school education, it's funny. Do you choose to work in marketing? I don't know. I don't think it was a deliberate choice to work in marketing. I ended up it was the first job. I ended up at Sun Microsystems because I knew a few people that worked there in my hometown in the Netherlands, and it was actually part of sort of recurring theme, but a new team that they started up based in the Netherlands, but very quickly growing to be a European and then a global organization. So we grew from, we were 3 or 4 at the beginning, to a team of about 25, 30 people in a few years. And then, I mean, that's sort of how that goes in bigger organizations, is that, well, opportunities arise and come, and teams, well, disappear and merge and sort of merge into bigger organizations. Then we became part of the, let's say, the field marketing organization of Sun Microsystems, and sort of rolled into like a proper marketing roles, like more field marketing, more field oriented, partner oriented, a lot of partner work as well. And that's where I guess, found out, I guess, that it's the relation and the closeness to the field and to let's say the sales side of the house is something that I like very much. And not necessarily being a salesperson, but enabling sales and being close to let's say the commercial side of the house. So I've been on that side, I guess, ever since. So then after Sun, so I spent 10 years at Sun, as you said. In the meantime, I moved from the Netherlands to France, working for Sun as well. And then after 10 years, actually, Sun was acquired by Oracle. Then it was, okay, Oracle is, I mean, Sun was a big company, 35,000 people. Oracle is huge, right? So the question then was, okay, what do we, are we going to continue with Oracle, or is it maybe time for a change? So I said, okay, time for a change. And so after 10 years at Sun, so I changed careers completely and started a camper van rental company, which is completely different, but it was very a very interesting experience, I guess. So did that in the south of France, and I created the company from scratch. So again, a very interesting experience that I learned a lot from, and I still use a lot of the things that I learned in that period today. As a foreigner starting up a company in France, so learning France is quite heavy on administration, for example, and so all the administration, all the legal side of things, setting everything up from a sales and marketing and communications perspective. Yeah, very interesting. So I did that for about 4 years. Again, great experience. But then after 4 years, I had some personal change as well. Got married, had a baby, so it was, let's say, time to leave, let's say, the wild period behind and sort of and go back to a, let's say, a serious role, but it's back to some more, I guess, a more stability. And that's, as I said earlier on, that's where I started looking around, and then I found Marklogic. So that's a sort of a brief experience or sharing of the steps and how that happened. Yeah.
Yeah. So how has your experience as an entrepreneur shaped your view of marketing and your approach now?
I guess 2 things. So it made me realize the importance of marketing in as part of this, as a sales tool, right? Let's say the importance of marketing is great, but for me, marketing is really the end goal is to sell, right? Is to make money, and I think marketing is a great tool to help that. But I think that having your own company, the pressure is on even more than if you work for a company. If it's your own company, the pressure is on to sell, right, and to make money. And in my case, it was sort of renting out the vans, but it had to work, right? So every activity and everything that I did from a marketing perspective or a communications perspective. So you get very sensitive and very aware of cost, right? And how much you spend and the money or the budget that you have or that you don't have, right? So be quite careful with spending, I'd say. And then and the sales bit, right? The importance of sales and the importance of marketing for sales, and it gave me it made me more of a creative person as well, because I mean the camper van business is completely different than the tech world, right? But I think that the way that we like creating the website, we talk about content, the go-to-market, doing the events and trade shows that I did when I had this camper van business. It's sort of helped me as well later on, and still does in I guess being a bit more creative and being a bit more open-minded in the way that we view marketing and that we view go-to-market in general, and how we position to Marklogic today, and how we and the differences within the regions. So it's I think it made me get more open-minded, a bit more creative, but also more on the let's say from a business perspective, more quite careful around budget, for example, right? And you can spend a dollar, you can spend it only once, and that's when you have your own company, you're actually quite conscious of that.
Yeah, so it kind of helped you see the big picture and think about how everything relates to the bottom line. So I wanted to, kind of going back to what you're doing now, I wanted to ask you if you could share any example of a campaign or a piece of content that has worked really well for you, because you probably know at the content mix, we're focused on the
Yes.
content side of marketing. So
content, I mean, content is key, right? Or content is king and it's especially relevant, I guess, in working in as a lot of the peers and a lot of people that have appeared on the show as well. It's working in an international environment. It's really important that you adjust your content to your audience, right? And it's I know it's sort of like kicking in an open door, but it's really, if you see it in a lot of cases, in a lot of organizations, it's not so obvious, right? And it's really but it's really important, because you want to address the people with relevant content, right? And you want to address the audience with relevant content, and really adjust your content to the person or let's say the persona that you are reaching out to. So what's working well for us, I mean, and content is not like an independent element. For me, content it's part of a campaign, right? And a campaign or an activity is not just sending one email, but if we talk about a campaign, it's always like a sequence of events, of activities, of actions that we perform. And content is a key factor. It plays a key role, and especially in an international organization. If we look at, for example, we take Germany or the DACH region, for example, as an example. That is 3 countries, right? It's Germany, it's Austria, it's Switzerland, different languages, different industries, different cultures. And in an American company, for example, a lot of the basis is English, but you still have to adjust, again, the messaging to the audience. And we talk about, we cover a variety of use cases in a variety of industries. We work a lot in the aerospace industry, in the manufacturing industry, in the pharmaceuticals. The message cannot be the same, right? And the use cases that we address are different for the different industries. We can talk about we can talk about like regulatory compliancy for financial services, for example, or in the pharmaceutical industry, we talk about clinical trials. You need to make sure that the message that you bring is relevant for the person that you try to speak to, right? So it's really important. So not just from a language perspective, but also from an industry perspective and the person that you're going after, in a way. So you speak differently. You have a different message for let's say a business person than you would have for, let's say, an enterprise architect in an organization, right? So that is key. So content is really important. It's the same with everybody. Everybody receives so many emails on a daily basis, and if the message in the email or in the message or in the phone call or whatever, or on social media, the post, whatever, if it doesn't appeal to you, you're not going to read it, right? It's going to delete, poof, gone. So that is key. So so we spend a lot of time on, and not just a marketing team, because for me, it's truly, it's a team effort, and not just a marketing team, but also let's say the stakeholders that we work with, whether that is sales, who know the customer, who know the accounts, right? Who know the people that we want to go after. The SDR teams, like the sales or business development teams that we work with, because they are very involved in, for example, profiling the personas within a certain organization. And then we have
Which,
the marketing
by the way,
team.
Yeah, I was curious, like, who are the personas in your target audience? But anyway, you can finish about the marketing team.
So, and then the marketing team, of course, that sort of ties it all together. But then sometimes we need. I mean, we're in the IT industry. We sell a technical product, right? So I'm not a technical person. You don't have to. I can explain what it is that we do, But if we look under the hood, I mean, I'm not able to explain to you all the functionalities of the database and how that works, right? So we have like technical teams that can help us also with providing the content. If we talk to an architect, it needs to be a certain technical level. So all these different stakeholders make up for the team, and we spend a lot of time in trying to figuring out who do we want to go after, what are these people's pain points, what are their challenges, and how can we, from a company, from a Marklogic perspective, address those challenges, right? And how can we make our messaging and our content optimal so that it reaches the right audience and we can engage with them.
Yeah, so then my next question, was about the target audience. Like, who makes up your target audience, and what are your most important channels for reaching them?
It depends a bit on the use case that we're the use case. It's like the problem that we're trying to solve, right? So I think also what we've done at Marklogic over the past, let's say, year and a half, is that we are trying to move away from, well, I call it sort of the navel gazing, and it's not just Marklogic. You see that with a lot of other vendors as well. Is that we go out to people presenting what it is that we do, right, and presenting our offering, and saying this is what we can do for you. While we should actually be saying, okay, what is your problem? Listen, and so stop talking, but listen. And then understand the challenges and the pain points, and then say, okay, we can help you with that because we've done this and this in another for another company, for example, with similar challenges. So depending on the use case or the business problem, the challenge that we're facing, or that the let's say the prospect is facing, it can be more of a business audience. But often the main stakeholders or the main personas that we want to go after are more the technical people, like architects, like enterprise architects are a key persona for us in the organizations that we go after, because they're the ones that are heavily involved in, let's say, the technical or the technology side of the house, and are often either decision makers or influencers in making that buying decision, right, from my customer or prospect perspective.
I didn't even know that enterprise architect was a role.
Oh yeah,
I didn't know that it's very specific.
Very important. Yes.
But I guess it only exists in very large companies, which are your target clients.
Well, so we do enterprise sales, right? So we go after big organizations, but I mean, enterprise architect or like the equivalent in a smaller company, but it's the technical person that has also, let's say, like an understanding of the business, which is an influencer to the person that has the checkbook that will eventually sign the check, right? But often the people that sign the check are sort of in a position where they don't always see the impact to the business, right? So you need to make sure that you reach the people that feel the pain in a way, and that know what needs to happen in order to make a change. And so that's what we're trying to do.
Right. So when it comes to like the types of content that you create, do you have any maybe you could tell us about the channels you use, but also any specific examples of particular content pieces that worked really well?
So we try to, so we're moving more and more, as many others are as well, more. So one of the key words for me is focus. So it's very important to, so we have let's say a sniper approach to wherever. We don't do this pray and pray anymore. So we are very focused on, let's say, the organizations that we want to go after, the industry, the organizations, and the people within those organizations, and we adjust our messaging to that. So we don't do a lot of like mass marketing, but it's quite focused. So that can be anything from. So we do a lot of social media, of course, as I said, working with teams, like with sales, so very close alignment with sales in identifying the people, and with the SDR team that will do the profiling. So we do a lot of social media. So LinkedIn, for example, is a key tool for us, like LinkedIn, Zoom info, those kinds of things. Then we create messages for them. So we use a tool called Outreach, where we can create like sequences of messaging that we send to them. So which can be an email, which is a reminder for a phone call, but it can be. The idea is to in a way adjust the approach to it's basically find the customer where they are, right, or meet them where they are. So if the customer is active on social media, or is expressing a preference for a certain media, whether it is email or social media, whatever, or phone, we'll try to meet them where they are, right? If a customer is explicitly saying, I don't want people to call me, we're not going to pick up the phone and call him, right? It's probably going to be an email or social media or some other way that we can do it. But I guess it's about the journey, right? And getting to the right people and getting them interested, right? It's like taking them by the hand and taking them on the journey from let's say a first contact to making them interested in the solution and what we can potentially do for them, and educating them and nurturing them through email, through social media, through webinars. I mean, of course, in this sort of COVID remote world, face to face is more and more difficult. Hopefully, we'll get back to some of the face to face, not necessarily events, but like smaller focused, like workshops, dinners, that kind of stuff. We can go back to that. But it's a variety of actions that we perform in order to reach the right audience. And then, from a content perspective, email, of course, but yes, social media. Different things. But trying to meet the customer where they are.
And do the channels vary depending on the market? I mean, you're responsible for some really diverse markets, so I was wondering if the approach changes very much.
I would say in Europe it's quite similar. It's quite similar. It's quite similar. I guess it's also because going after the let's say the bigger accounts, most of the people and over the personas that we go after are let's say overall fairly international people. So we do see them on like similar platforms like LinkedIn, and but there are some regional variations like Zing in Germany or Viadeo in France, but we don't really use that. I would say from a social media perspective, it's quite international, quite similar. But then as we said earlier on as well, if you talk about, let's say, regional varieties, of course, if you talk about like Germany or France from a language perspective, we'll adjust the messaging and the content because we'll localize it, right? And we'll localize it from a language perspective, so French or German, but also sometimes the way that we put content forward is different. I know, like the Germans are very keen on, they like statistics, for example, right? And proof of why you say that we can do it 10 times faster, but prove it to me, show me, like, how did you get that? And in some other, if you say it, it's like, okay, great, 10 times faster. But the Germans are more like statistics, they want more like proof. And others are more, like customer stories are important. So so there is of course a regional variation in the content that we create and how we bring it to market, I'd say.
Yeah, and actually when I asked you for examples ahead of the interview, you mentioned one about like a pharmaceutical campaign around clinical trials that you had done for Germany and then adapted for the UK. So
yes,
can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So that's very important, right? For me is to the team is key for me as well. And what I try to do is that or economies of scale, but is use best practices, right? And try to avoid reinventing the wheel every time, because there is this pharma is a good example actually, because it's, even if we have different regions, but sometimes we touch the same industry, right? Like pharmaceutical is a good example. So we're big on pharma in the German region, so in Switzerland, so some big companies there. So we started a program with them, with a few companies in Switzerland, but at the same time we cover pharma in the UK as well. So there's like AstraZeneca, GlaxoSmithKline. There's a few big pharma companies out there. So we said, okay, you know what? We started that in the German region. Is there a possibility for us to reuse it? Not one-to-one, but adapting it locally where needed, but reuse that in the UK. And yes. So again, that's the importance of the team, because that is not just a marketing decision, right? You need to make sure that the sales is on board, that the SDR, that, let's say, the stakeholders are on board with that and see the added value. But that was a good one, right? And they said, okay, let's do that. So killing
And
two
what is
birds with
the
one.
campaign involved? Like it's a case study or it's a
So
webinar
in
or
this
what did
case
you?
like clinical trials, right? It's like it's in the pharmaceutical companies, they make drugs, right? And so in order for that to go to market, there is a lot of testing and trialing. It's like that takes years. So it's all about data, right? So there's a lot of data involved, whether it's the drug data, it's customer data, it's patient data. There's all kinds of things that they need to be. And I guess what we're trying to do is optimize the clinical trial process, right? Because let's say it's a process of 10 years from designing a drug to bringing it to market. If you can, they do like hundreds of thousands of clinical trials with patients. If you can optimize that and say, and you can win a year, that is huge in terms of cost savings, right? Or if you can say in the number of clinical trials you can get to a result, whether it's a positive or a negative result, and deciding to let's move forward or let's stop the trial. If you can, based on the data that you have, if you can make the decision quicker, there's a lot of money involved, right? It's
Right, absolutely.
So that's so in a nutshell. But it's we started doing that in Switzerland and sort of exported that into the other regions. And there's a few other examples as well. So that's for me that's really important. The team element is sharing what we're doing and sharing best practices, and if possible, reuse campaigns, content, use cases, topics that we address in one regions and try to reuse that in other regions where we can.
Yeah, and I'll point out that pharmaceuticals is just one of the many industries that Marklogic works with, and but a particularly relevant one right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah.
Okay. Okay. So switching gears, I wanted to ask you about some of your advice and recommendations. So first of all, just how you stay up to date on marketing trends and any recommendations you have on resources to track or how you stay up to date personally.
So marketing trends. I mean, it's. I guess as everyone, I watch the news and I watch some of the, let's say, the industry material, the content mix. There's social media, right? Where you, especially, let's say the company, or whether it's sort of leading companies or other companies or competitors or in the industry, follow how they do things, right? How they position themselves, if they have like similar offerings, how do they, from a marketing perspective, position themselves? What kind of stuff do they do? How do they communicate? So I follow that. I spend a fair bit of time on that. Yeah, I guess. There's a book. I have it here. Crossing the Chasm. It was one of the questions. One of the favorite business books.
Yeah.
Crossing the Chasm is one that I've read and that we've used at Marklogic as well from a let's say from a sales and a marketing, like a go-to-market standpoint. An interesting one, but there's loads out there. But this is what I particularly liked, and we used it as well in how we defined our go-to-market strategy and the focus on specific industries and on accounts and how companies adopt technology and how you can, with the different audiences, from the innovators, early adopters, and how you can build or bridge the gap between from the early adopters to the, let's say, the mainstream audience, and how you can, from let's say a software vendor perspective, you can position yourselves in order to get there. So really interesting book.
So speaking of technology, do you recommend any app or tool that you're using lately?
Well, lately, that's probably the same for everyone now, right? It's Zoom. We use WebEx, so there's a lot of Zoom, WebEx, Teams, Slack. I mean, of course, all that that's standard practice for most people today, I guess. From a personal perspective, Spotify, I should mention it because it's a big music fan, so I always have music on. So Spotify is a big one as well from a personal perspective.
Well, and then I wanted to ask if you have any productivity hack you could share.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Not really from a tool perspective, but more from I guess maybe an operations point of view. I start the day, or try. So I try to start the day and then get the hairy subjects out of the way, as early on, right? A difficult phone call to make, a tricky budget proposal you need to write, or a difficult, again, difficult conversation to have, or a difficult email to write. Get that sort of let's say the difficult stuff out of the way early on in the morning, because I tend to feel that when you're sort of fresh in the morning, you get that out of the way, it makes you sort of feel lighter the rest of the day, right? It's just like, okay, at least that's done, and you can. If you wait too long, it's like all day you see that thing looming in the back, like, oh, I need to get to that, and just get it over with in the morning, then it's done.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good tip. And then just wanted to ask if you recommend any other resources for marketers, whether it's an industry group or online community or publication.
So in France, there's a very good group. It's called the CMIT. So it's a group that that regroups, I guess, all the marketing leaders in the tech industry in France. So it has several hundreds of people and members that get together when we can, right? But also virtually. So they do a lot of webinars, a lot of training, a lot of like coaching sessions, and there's this. It's quite an active community that sort of that interacts with each other also, to share experiences. And so, from a French perspective, that's an interesting one. That's a good one. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. And well, we're reaching the end of the interview, so just wanted to give you the chance to give us any final parting advice or takeaways for other marketers in Europe.
So for my personal view, I mean, for me, it's very important is make it a team effort, right? So for me, there's no such thing as a marketing plan. It's always a team plan, because I see my takeaway is that for me, marketing, I see us as the conductors of the orchestra, where we work with different stakeholders, whether it's sales, the SDRs, the pre-sales team, the consultants, it's partners, other internal organizations, customers. It's everybody has a piece of music that they play, has a responsibility, and I see the marketing as the conductor of that orchestra to make sure that every one of those stakeholders plays their music, plays their piece, so that from a marketing perspective, we organize that and we turn it into, let's say, in a cohesive, a beautiful piece of music in a way. So make it a team effort. That's probably my takeaway for my peers.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Well, that's a great point and a good note to end on. A good musical note to end on.
Yeah.
So, thank you so much.
Recurring team and music.
Definitely, with some Spotify on in the background. So, great. Well, thank you so much, Milo, for sharing your insights with us today. It's been great.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure. A really good one. Thank you.
And thanks everybody for listening in. For more perspectives on the content marketing industry in Europe, check out the veracontent.com/mix and keep tuning into the podcast for interviews with content experts. See you next time. Bye.